looks like when you connect to one of the databases. So you have your application, then from between your application and the driver manager, you have your JDBC API. From this, you utilize the driver manager. The driver manager has separate drivers for each database, which you can use to connect. So the driver manager, this class manages a list of database drivers. As I said, different drivers. You have Mongo, you have MySQL, you have Oracle drivers. So it matches connection requests from Java application with the proper database driver using communication subprotocol. So the first driver that recognizes a certain subprotocol in the JDBC will be used to establish a database connection. So what does that mean? It means basically it'll check the list of instructions you provided. So the protocol would be that the communication subprotocol basically be the list of instructions, and according to whichever database you wanted to connect it, whichever properties you presented it with, it'll try to match it with its own, and then it'll connect you to that certain database. So the next is the driver. So this interface handles the communications with the database server. You will interact directly with driver objects very rarely. Instead, you use the driver manager objects, which manages objects to the stack. It also abstracts the details associated with working with driver objects. So what he's saying basically is you cannot you cannot directly interact with the driver over here. You have to have this medium in between the JDBC driver manager. So connection. So connection is an interface. This interface with all methods for connecting a database. So you use it to connect the database. We'll see everything in examples. So right now we're just reading over stuff. So since we didn't really get exposed to this in class. So this interface with all methods for contacting a database. The connection object represents communication context. All communication with the database is through a connection object only. So it'll basically provide connection to the database, just how it's named. So a statement, you use objects created from this interface to submit the SQL statements to the database. Basically, statements by statements means like queries. Some derived interfaces accept parameters in addition to executing stored procedures. Stored procedures inside of your database. That's what he's referring to, and you can accept parameters to actually put inside of the procedures you have in your database. So result set, these objects hold data retrieved from a database after you execute an SQL query using statement objects. So he's using result set use statement objects to actually store the data. So you use these to retrieve data from the database table. So it acts as an iterator to allow you to move through its data. So you could iterate through it, and then as it iterates, it'll start grabbing the information from the rows and the columns. SQL exception. This class handles any errors that occur in the database application. So it's just like your regular exceptions in a try catch. When you use a try or catch block, you can have an exception. So this SQL exception is for SQL statements. So you need to have that actually. Otherwise, you can't write an SQL a statement. You need to provide an exception. Otherwise, it won't allow you to actually go through it. Okay. So MySQL syntax. The create database statement is used for creating a new database. So the syntax is create database underscore name. So what do? You type in this line right here, with the semicolon. So create database, that's the syntax, and then database underscore name, it can be anything. So you can choose your database name. The drop database, drop actually, it basically means it deletes the database, so it's used for deleting an existing database. The syntax drop database name, same as create, just the name is different and functionality. The create table statement is used for creating a new table. The syntax is create table, that's the syntax, and then you choose your table name, and within the parentheses, you write your column name, and then with the space in between, you write the column data type. So data types for databases are a little different compared to your programming language. I believe you have variable, and this variety of characters. I'm not sure. It's varchar. It's basically uh, characters you can use. So and then you can give them a limit inside of parentheses, 10, 15, 20. For instance, for you can have a record called I'm sorry, you can have a column name called name, and then inside that column name, you can only have, let's say, up to 15 characters. So your name can only be 15 characters long. If it's longer than that, then they're gonna have to update their column settings. So and then with a comma in between, you can add more columns if you wish, and so on. So the drop table statement is used for deleting an existing table. The syntax is drop table and table underscore table. Very simple. And then the syntax for insert looks similar to the following, where column 1, column 2, and so represent the new data to value in the represented column. So insert into table name, and then you add the value. We'll see everything in detail. So let's open our IDE. Oh, if you guys want, actually, I believe SQL, this for Windows. SQL actually, if you type in, so if you type in MySQL, blah, 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 it actually provides you with a command line client, so you can just enter your password and log into it, but then this logs you into directly the user you're currently using. I believe either it only logs you to root, or the user you have currently using your workbench. So another way to do this is you could actually just open a new text file. And inside the text file, you could, so first locate where your SQL is. So for me, my SQL is in program files, MySQL server 5.7, and then you have the bin. Inside the bin, that's where the MySQL application is. So if you copy this address and you type in cd as in change directory all the way to your bin folder over here, this should be the same for, I assume this is the same for everyone who installing on Windows, because by default it's always installed in program files, and then it creates these directories. And then from here you can type in MySQL dash u and dash. So what will this do? This will basically navigate to your folder over here, inside your bin folder, and then it'll execute MySQL, which is this right here, and then it'll type in u as in the username. This is the user. That's the user I use. If you use a different user, you can just change the name over here, and then dash key for the password. So once you do that, you click on File and Save As, and name it anything, something that makes sense. So like for instance, run MySQL, and then in Save As type, you can do all files, and then save it as a .bat, which is a bad script. So once you save that, and let's close this. So this is text box. So this is what I just created, and I actually already have that. So I'm just going to delete this. That's just to show you guys how to create it. And so once you just double click on it, so it just Kareem, I believe, I'm not sure about text edit, but I know Sublime Text. Sublime Text. This works. But these commands are for the DOS, the Windows command. For Unix-based commands, that's what the Mac uses. I believe it's .bat. But for Mac, it's shell script. So I believe you can do the similar thing using shell script. Let me type shell script for that. So so again, once you run this, you don't. Oh, what's the, I clicked the wrong thing. So once you click this, you don't have to type everything all over again. It automatically does it for you. Automatically goes to your C folder and then runs MySQL, and then it takes your username as root, and then it asks you to enter your password. So you can just enter your password, and there you go. You connect it to your MySQL through your command line. So actually, let's see. Let's use some of the commands. So let's see which databases we currently have. So show databases, and as you can see, we have most of them are ones that it creates that are by default there, except the core underscore Java. That's the one I used for our exam, and we'll create another one using our IDE. So let's see.
Что?
У тебя maintain?
Да.
One second, let me find it as default. There we go. So here basically I created everything from scratch, whatever he did for us. A lot of people were confused about all this connectivity, how it connects and how it works. So basically that's what I focused on for this mentoring session is how to actually, how all of this works and how we actually connect to the database, how do we retrieve information, how do we store information, and how this all works. So I'll actually go over what he does in his methods as well. But let's look at some like simple things at first. So remember earlier I was talking about connection. So what did we say? I mean, what did we read? Connection is used to connect to your database, right? So this is like you could call it a data type, but it's actually not a data type. But just know that you can actually create reference variables. So con is a variable I created, and then I'm assigning it null value for now. Statement is the statement we were talking about earlier that you can use this data type, or you can use this object to actually execute SQL statements. We'll see everything in detail. So for now, I'm just creating. These are class variables, so all of them are being set to null. So all of them are being set to null right now, so we're not doing anything with them. So the first thing that pops into our minds, how to connect to a database, right? So let's write a method for it. So public void connect to DB. So nothing's really unfamiliar for now. Everything is, since we're creating a method. Now, these two, throws, class, not found exception, and SQL exception. So as we were reading earlier, you need SQL exceptions, right? Because anything to do with JDBC, these throw the JDBC error. So it's like a try-catch statement, but if you just say throw the SQL exception, the compiler already knows that you're actually doing something regarding databases. So it knows that you might have an error regarding SQL. So this is like, if you describe it as a method, you don't have to write try-catch statements here. Now, if I actually remove this, it's going to give me an error. Unhandled exception, Java SQL exception. So either I could do a try statement here, like try blah blah blah, and then add an SQL exception, or I could just add it here, SQL exception. we don't have any errors. So usually for smaller programs, what you would do is you would just use try-catch statements, unless you have like thousands and thousands of methods, and then inside of those methods, you're using multiple SQL statements. So then using try-catch statement is not wise because it's a lot of it affects your execution time, and it's a waste of space also on your eyes. It's like a bunch of statements, try-catch statement. If you just declare it, I mean, if you just type in go this skill, accepting it'll do it for you throughout the entire method. So class not found exception is for this thing right here, and we'll see what it means. So here we're creating a string, and then we're saying my driver. So we're creating a string, string variable called my driver, and then we're saying com.mysql.jdbc.driver. So this is the driver. So whenever you'll be using SQL, you need this. You need this right here. And where are we going to put it? I'll show you this now. So you see this class.corename, my driver. This is basically like your, how to say it? It's like it's recognizing that these are the properties you're giving it to, and this is the database we're going to be using. So you need this. You definitely need this. There are some other methods that you can use, but since you're in a JDK GRE environment and you have a JDK, this is all you need. Class.corename, and then you add the com MySQL JDBC drive. So these two are something like you probably could memorize. You need these two to actually connect to the data. Now, next, what do? We take the string URL. So JDBC MySQL localhost. So localhost means the machine thing is localhost. So in this case, this localhost for this machine is Furqan. I could actually just type Furqan and it'll still work. But I could just type in localhost if I don't know the name. And as you can see here, after that, I do not have a database selected. Why, we'll see in a bit. And use SSL is equal to false. So this is the socket security socket layer. Since the MySQL version we downloaded in class does not have SSL layer, so just in case, so it doesn't throw us some sort of error, we're setting it as false. Very simple. So next is your username. So the username we're using is root, and the string, the password is admin. So well, that's my password right now, which is admin. It's not really very wise, I would say, throw it out in the open if you're in your company. The way Makibai did it in his class, in his exam code, that's probably a better way. But how to use that and everything, we'll see with it when we go over his code. But yeah, basically that's I would say a more professional way of doing it. But this is also obviously this is also fine. You could probably use this too. So this is your password. This is your username. Does anyone have any questions so far? Before I keep going on.
Furqan?
Yes, Alex.
This is Paul. So basically, you're creating a new class, right? Connect to database. You're creating your own class.
Oh, it's like I would say it's like loading. So in my driver, we're putting this string value com.mysql.jdbc driver, and then in the class.corename, we're actually passing this the string variable. So this basically is telling this IDE that we're going to be using MySQL. So you could think of it that way. So we're loading this driver in a sense. So then after this executes, it's going to look for a driver inside our project. It's going to look for a driver. And if we type shift control alt s and open the project structures, and if you go to the modules, we already have that selected. So this is basically its function. Why do we need this? Well, obviously we could be using another database, right? So in that case, if we were using Oracle, we would put in the same thing for Oracle here, and then we would load Oracle over here instead of loading MySQL. So this is a way. This is like loading the drive. That means this class in Java. You mean this dot something? No, I don't think so. I'm not exactly sure, but all I know is the functionality of this is to load the driver. And if you are not using, if you're using Java independent, like a JDK independent, like as a tool to actually write your source code, you would have another way of doing this. But in this case, this is the most basic and the most easiest way to actually load your driver. So think of it as loading your driver for the certain database you're going to be using. So if you change this over here to the same thing that would be reading your Oracle driver, it's going to load your Oracle driver. So you could think of it as loading the driver. Again, I'm not an expert on the subject, so if I have any, if I'm saying something that's incorrect, you guys can always correct me. So, so now the URL. So this is basically the URL to our localhost. It's going to use this to connect to your database on your machine. So earlier on, I was saying that you could actually connect remotely to, let's say I'm here and I want to connect the database to my office. I could change this localhost here, and I would do this. I have that here. And the port that is going to use to actually get to the database. So you would need to have your firewall at your computer. Um, have that port unblocked so that people get remote access. And also you would need to provide a security, a layer of security so that nobody accesses it without support. But for now, you don't need to worry about that. So this statement JDBC colon and then MySQL colon 2 forward slashes. You could type in your host name, or you could just say localhost, and then we're not putting in the database name right now. Just using this. I'll show you guys why in a bit. And then connection, as I said, it's just to establish connection between the database. So once you have everything, so the drive, which driver you have, the IDE is supposed to look for during during compile time, which driver is supposed to look for. Now you know how you're going to connect to the database. You have your username, you have your password. Now it's time to set up the connection. So that's the part would be the connection, and then you put it to the driver manager. So that's what we were talking about earlier over here. Where is it? The driver manager. So you use the JDBC API up to here. That's the JDBC API. So this is from the JDBC API, and now you're connecting to JDBC driver manager. So you're connecting driver manager dot get connection. So you're connecting, and then you're using the URL over here, entering your username and your password. So you won't have to touch MySQL. It won't ask you for your username or your password. It's going to do everything for you. Your ID is going to do everything for you. So that's basically connecting to a database. Now let's see if this works. I mean, we talked a lot about it. Does it work? So for now, let's just say S out. If it works, we're going to say connected to the yeah. There you go. And so while you execute it, you need a try-catch statement. Why do you need a try-catch statement? It's because I believe when it runs, it doesn't. It still needs something to, if it doesn't connect, it still needs to give an output over here. So let's see. So connect to DB, connect. So we're just creating an object, or we're just instantiating it, and then we have a type statement and then an add statement. If this doesn't work, it's going to give an error. There you go. You need to track that statement because connect DB. Exactly. So it throws an exception, so it needs something. Otherwise, it won't let you. If we remove this, it won't let you. Okay. Unhandled exception, Java language class not found exception, Java SQL exception. So once you put the try catch statement, it'll handle the exception. So connected to DB. This means we successfully connected to DB. Or did we? I mean, we don't see anything right now, so we'll see in a bit. But for now, we know our method works. Like there's logically speaking, there's nothing wrong with how we're trying to connect. So let me just comment this out. Okay. So the next method we have is connect to DB mentoring job. So now, actually, let's ignore this for now and let's go to create database. I'll show you why I'm ignoring this for now. Oh, so are you saying that I don't have a regular exception? This one? It's in the throw list already. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's see. Create database in MySQL, just the method name, and we're passing a string called SQL. Try connect DB, so we're gonna try to connect to the database. Let me comment this out because we're on. So connect to DB. Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. So connect to DB. So we're just calling this method over here. We're going to try to connect to the database, and then remember the null statement variable we created here. Now inside the statement variable, we're going to connect that create statement. So this is a method of connection, which you can create a statement, and then you can use that statement to call execute update. There's actually another one called execute query, but if you use execute query to create something, it's not going to work. You have to execute update. It won't execute query. So what are you doing basically here? So this is the syntax. This is something you would have to keep in mind. This is what you're going to be using. So you're saying you want to create a statement, and then you're saying that statement is going to hold that. And then you're saying statement that execute update, and then you're passing that string over here. You could actually write it inside here too, if you just ignore the parameters, and then maybe string SQL and do whatever you want to, whatever query you want to pass it, So here we're creating a database, so you can type in create database and database underscore name, right, and so on, blah blah blah. But the thing would be that each time you call this method, it'll be creating the same database. That's not very useful, is it? Like then you have to create a method that creates another database for you. So it's better to just leave it as it is. Just pass a parameter, and then you can write the query in there, and then it'll automatically put the query inside of the statement, and then it's gonna just execute it. We'll see what I mean by that. So and then it's gonna, after it creates, it's just gonna say database created, and then all these exceptions need to be handled. I did not throw them in the method over here, because it's better to just write a try catch statement if you have a smaller program, rather than actually just throwing them in the method. I heard it can have some issues, but I'm not too sure. So I just wrote them manually. So how many exceptions do we have here? So catch is SQL exception. So this is for JDBC when you're trying to execute the query. If it's having a problem, it's going to throw an exception. And then a regular exception, and this is for errors for the class name up here for this class name. And then finally, why do we need a finally? We're just making sure that statement is null in the end. So if statement is not null, statement.close, so it's going to make it null basically. This is going to close the statement. So there's not going to be any statement in it anymore. So this is going to close the statement, and then it's going to throw another SQL exception if you're not able to do it. And then try if connection is not null, and then you're going to close the connection to the database. And then catch exception, and then another SQL exception, and then you're going to end it finally, and then you're going to end it try catch. So let's use this. So connect.create database MySQL. So remember, we're going to pass a query inside of this. So once you could say template for database connection. I mean, I'm not sure how efficient this is. I used some help from the internet, and I just narrowed it down to not to be complicated but rather simple. It's not that hard actually. But I don't know about the efficiency though. If there's a better way, to make this more efficient, because I don't know. Like maybe there's a better way to write all these things using different methods. So you're calling that method we just saw, create database MySQL, and then you're passing this create database mentoring underscore Java. So this, what are you passing? You're passing SQL query, right? So if you pass this inside of your MySQL over here, create database mentoring underscore Java. There you go. So now if we show databases, can you guys see this query? Okay. I guess it should be better. So if you show databases, now you see a mentoring underscore Java database here, right? So let's drop it. Let's drop database mentoring underscore Java. So we just deleted it. So now if we see the databases, we don't have a database called mentoring underscore Java. So basically, this is the query we use to create a database, right? So we're passing this query into create database MySQL, and it's going to take that query in, and then it's going to execute it. And if our logic is correct, it should create a database. So if we run it, so it says database created. Now, how do we check this? Let's go back here. Show databases. Press enter, and there you go. Mentoring underscore Java was created. Very simple, right? So now we go back. Now we created our database. So how do we connect to that database? Rather than earlier we weren't connected to a database, right? So now we can just create a method. It's identical to the one on top of this, except one small thing. This has the database name in it, mentoring with Java. So this way you can now connect to that specific database. You could always just change the name here, but then what if you wanted to create another database? Then you would have to go back and delete this. So why not just create two methods? This is small difference, and then this one you can actually use it for multiple databases, right? So instead, if you wanted to, there's a possible. One, so you can keep a copy of all three. Maybe. If you're glad to worry about the code, I can always push it to Git and then I can provide the link, or I'll just okay. um yeah, so you can always come back and change the database name here, but then you can use this. Either way, it's up to the user's preference. So this specific method would connect to this mentoring and this Java database. So now how would we know that that works? So with that, let's comment this out. So since we already created a database, if you leave this hanging around here, we'll try to create another database. So let's run this. We already have that database created, right? If we run this now, it's going to give you a bunch of can't create database mentioning of Java database exists. So there we go. All right. So next thing is dropping the database. So we just created a database. Now we could actually use the same method to drop the database. Instead of passing, we just named it create database. You could just say database MySQL and just keep on passing any sort of queries into it. But I don't know. So I just created another method. It does the exact same thing. Drop database. It has the same commands. It's just that this line over here just says database drop. So it's more like it's a validation that you're dropping the database and rather than creating it. So if you run this, so the only difference will be the query path, which if I just type in create database mentoring Java, it'll just create another database called mentoring for Java. So it's just basically this method is just executing queries. But let's run this, and it says database drop. Now how do we check? Let's go back here. Show database. And as you can see, it's not there anymore. So, which means our method works perfectly fine. Let's comment this out. Let's run this since we actually need that database. And database created. So, we have that database now. So, let's see. The next method would be, the next would be, connecting to our mentoring Java database. So let's try running that. As I said, it does the same thing as connected database, except it's just changing the path. It's actually going to use mentoring underscore Java. So when you call this method, you're already inside a database rather than it directly with rather than just the database server. Over here, you're actually pointing towards the database. So you're using a database because you're entering the database name here. Let's run this. So satisfy that statement. I did not put output over here. So these are like checks you can just, you don't necessarily have to run this by itself. Obviously, it's not doing anything for you, but it's good practice to make sure you actually connect it before you go on and write the rest of your code. So you can just say connected to entering, connected to database. There we go. Now let's run it again and connected to database mentoring underscore Java. Great. So we know our code works. So let's comment that out. Now we create a database. We drop the database. Now what's next? Create table and select the database. So basically, if I select the database, I mean the database we just connected to up here, mentoring Java. So obviously, to create a table, you can't be pointing at no database and trying to create a table that's going to throw you error. So what do we do here? Yeah, I will. We're actually doing the same thing as before. It's just a different method name. We're again just connecting to, but this time we're connecting to Java, metric Java database. And then same thing, we're creating a statement and then we're executing that statement and throwing a bunch of exceptions. So what are all these methods doing? They're just executing queries. What would you? So basically, what we did till now, we could have done it using one method, but it's not. I would say it's not good practice because if you are running something called just query, actually you could just run. You could just name it query, and then you could create a database from it. You could create tables using it. So I could have what I could have done is just name one of these things. Just call it query and then run it each time. Then just so that you guys could, so that just you guys could see that we're creating a database and we're creating this, we're creating that. It's the same procedure. We're doing the same exact steps each time, but it's just that it looks better this way to me at least, and then it's also for you guys to see that what exactly we're doing. So we're calling it git. So what we're doing is just executing queries, and most of these methods, that's exactly what they're doing. But then some of them will be doing a little different things. So then you would have to create several methods for several different tasks. So we just connected to mentoring Java database. Now let's create a table in that database. So let's see, where's our create table and select the database. So now over here, instead of calling, as I said earlier, instead of calling connect to database, which is pointing at no database, we're calling connect to Java mentoring, which is pointing at Java underscore mentoring underscore Java. So create table and select the database. So we're just going to pass another query, and then inside the try-catch statement, you're going to connect to DB mentoring Java. Going to create a statement, and then you're going to execute that statement. And these are a bunch of exceptions. You can always copy paste this each time. So let's try it. Okay, so my mouse keeps disconnecting. I don't know why. So connect create table and select the database. So we're just passing a query. Create table, table name, and the first name and the first column is name, and it's a type of Furqan, and then you can just give it a size. So I'm just giving 255. That's a huge size, but just so we won't have any issues writing our name. And then last is the last name, and then characters 255 again. So this is basically going to create a table called table one with the first column name called name with this data type, and then the second column called last with this data type. So let's run it and let's see. I'm gonna mess this out. So it just says process finished. So let's go and take a look at it inside of the database. So let's use what is our database name? Mentoring for Java. Use mentoring underscore Java, and it's a database change. So let me take a look what you're missing. What do I do? CD program file. Let's go. Yeah, using the username between you and then the P, there should be root. You could add root or any other user. Yeah, currently you could. If you want, I can actually copy paste that for you. Yeah. Okay, so well, as we were doing earlier, we're just using our mentoring underscore Java database. So we just change that to that database, and to see all the tables inside of the database, you can just type in show tables and semicolon. And then it says table one, and that's the table we just were trying to create. So create table one name, and then with the last column. How do we check the column? I believe show column. Show column from table one. Show column. Okay, there you go. So as you can see, one column is name and the other one is last, and then you have the type of data you're using and the data stored within it. So for now it's null, and by default it's null, and it's not a key either. So let's go back here. Yeah, you could set it up as an environment variable. I think he means if you go here. You could also set it as a system variable. Anyway, okay, we created our database using our application. Now, what's left? Inserting records. So Now that's where things get a little, not complicated, but this is where you have to have certain methods to do certain tasks for you. So let's see. So I named it insert two records at once because it's going to take two parameters, and these two parameters are referred to two insert statements. So all you can do is only insert two records at once using this. So how do we insert two records? So same way we create a statement, and then in that statement, in the first statement, we're executing the first statement here, and then the second statement here. These are same, a bunch of exceptions. So if you want to add more, you could just pass in more parameters, and and then you could update more records at once. But if you don't need if you only need to add one record at once, so you don't even need these two parameters. You would only need to run a single SQL execute statement, and then you could get rid of the other parameter over here. But let's add two at once and see what happens. So the query we're going to be using is insert, and then insert into table name, and values would be the value you're storing. So for varchar type data type, you need to add these single quotations, and then inside you add the value you're going to store inside that column. And since the other one was also varchar, you also need to add the single quotation. So basically, what is this doing? This is going to Furqan, and in the last one, we're going to Furqan inside of these two columns over here. The first, the name column, and the last column. And then the second query we're going to ask is we're inserting data, but the first name is going to be Bob, the last name is going to be the builder. So this is just inserting records. So let me comment this out, and let's run this. So it just says process finished with exit closure. So let's go take a look at our database. So now let's run show columns for given. So to see all the records, you can add select and star. That star stands for all. So select all from the table name, table 1. And as you can see, table 1 contains the first name. In the name field, you can see Furqan, the last you can see Khan, and then you can see Bob, the builder. So basically, you just inserted data inside a SQL table using your Java ID. Now, how do we retrieve data from that table? So we inserted data, right? Now, how do we retrieve data? So for that, you can just create another method called retrieve data from table. Now, in this, you will also be passing a query. Same way you're going to connect to the database, the mainstream Java database. You're going to create a statement, and then you're going to make now RS is result set. What is a result set? We just went over this earlier. It's right here. These objects hold data retrieved from a database after you execute an SQL query using statement objects. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're executing a statement object, and we're going to be using this result set to hold that data. And then we're going to iterate through it to retrieve the data. So ignore these commented things for now. I'll show you in a bit why we keep. So now you're saying the result set is equal to statement that it. So you're going to execute the query. You're going to execute the query which you passed, and then all of that data inside that query, you're going to be storing into RS variable, the result set variable. And after you store it, you can just iterate through it. So you create a while loop and rs.next, and then string first name, and you're just getting you're storing first name from this from this method that's the results set method get string. So you're getting all the values from the column name, and you're storing it inside first name. So rs.getString from this column right here. And similarly, the last name in a string variable, your rs.getString from the last name column, and then you're storing it into last name. Lastly, you're printing it out name, first name, and then the surname, which is the last name. So let's run this and let's see what it does. So connect. Okay, that was inserting it. So the query we're going to be passing is select name last from table one. So this is another query. This basically selects these two columns from table one. So if it had more than two columns, let's say it had 5 columns, it would not be touching the other columns. It would only touch these two columns because these are the ones specified. Select name and last, and then once you pass this query inside of this method called retrieve data from table, it's going to execute that statement over here, and then it's going to store those both columns inside of the result set, and then you can iterate through that result set, and you can store the values in different variables over here. Now let's run it and let's see what it gives us. So name Furqan, surname Khan, and name Bob, surname Patel. So it just retrieves the data for you. Now you could actually also store these values inside of let's say an array. You could do that too. How do we do that? So we'll have to comment this out. Okay, so let's take this up. So we create a list called a string type list, and it's this called list, and we're just so for now since a list can only store one type of object, you could actually store everything from actually let's try that. Let's see how it works out. List.add rs.getString and column name would be last. Okay. And then what you could do is for each loop. Let's try out this one. So let's see how this prints out things. Get this thing. Let's try this out. No, anyway, this is a testing job. So what you could do if you want to store all of this inside of a list, you wouldn't be able to retrieve that list, but Masibai had a method that does it, and I'll go over that too. But what you could do if you want to store, it's actually pointless. But if you really want to have a list that stores all of the data, let's say you wanted to print out all the first names, you could just create a list, an array list called list, and you can just you're just adding all the values from main table. So inside of the parameter, you just type in rs.getString and then name. So basically, it'll be storing all of the data from your from your from your name call. And let's actually try printing this out outside. So all the first names in this record, Furqan and Bob. So we're retrieving only the first name. So similarly, you could create another list and you could store the last name column inside of that. So just like this, you could store the last name inside of the same list, or you could create another list for that. That's all up to you. But if you store it in that list, I believe it'll store them onto store the first name that comes, then it'll store the last name. So each record would actually be first name, last name, and then you could actually also print it out each time if you wanted to. You can do a bunch of different things. It's all up to you. There's several different things you can do with this. It all depends on how you want to do things. How you want your things to work. Some like it with array lists, some just regular variables. So that's all there is to the simple database connection. And from here you can just build up on it. Now if you understand this, there's everything else would start making sense to you. So let's go over to our exam. And let's see what Mafify did with his database. So the reason I'm going over databases is a lot of people are complaining, and this is just for a little clarification. I'm not sure how much it's helping everyone out, but even if it helps a little, I guess it's something. Yeah, and the other thing, I did not go over MongoDB at all, so I'm still kind of like stuck. Yes, I would say you could. Once you learn how to connect to SQL, you could probably learn how to use MongoDB as well. Actually, I don't know if I can. I'll try to look into it. If I can get Mongo to work, and then maybe we can do a get-straight session over MongoDB. It's different. Now the syntax is different. Yeah, I didn't bother. Some people were saying that MongoDB was actually better than SQL. I didn't know how or why, but some people that's what they were saying, that MongoDB does everything. It's a little more efficient in some manners. Okay, so let's see what Mafify did in his ConnectDB, his JSON format. Okay, it's the same way. He also created a connection called connect. He put it as null and statement, which is also null. And he used prepared statements. I did not use that in my example, but he used this, and we'll see what he can do. And result set, null. And then he has what he did different while connecting the database. He created a .properties file, and he input all the properties over here. He has all the properties. So the com.mysql, the driver, And this is my own. I don't think he gives out the complete answers of the project or anything. I guess you could ask him, but I'm not sure. And that's the URL. As you can see, he is actually connecting to a database core_Java. So that's why he wanted us to create a core_Java database first. And then root is the username and the password is, well, that's something he said. I think exactly whatever he said. So here he has a method called properties, and it's a static method, and it's returning property type of data. So it throws an input-output exception. So why do we have that? Is because we have an input stream over here. You would need to throw an IO exception, otherwise it'll give you an error. So same way, he's creating he's instantiating properties over here. And then from input stream, he's loading into a file input stream, the properties over here. So he's loading inside of, he's loading a file. He's loading all these settings inside a file over here. And then prop.load ISM. So from this properties class, I guess there's a method called load. And he's loading all these properties inside of it. Oh, you'll do. Okay, that's great. And then he's just closing the input stream and he's returning properties. So what all of this does, basically, what he's doing is he's going inside this file, he's grabbing everything, he's storing it, and then he's just returning all those properties. So this method will basically give you all of this. You could actually not do this, but then this is actually a good way. It looks more professional. And there's probably some reason of him doing this. I guess we can ask him. And then connect to database. Now again, he's properties. He's creating properties object here, and then he's loading the properties. And then these are the same, the driver class property, that get property. Now in here, instead of the class for name, actually he's still using class for name now, but he's loading inside the driver class, the driver variable. He's loading that property, MySQL JDBC.driver, which would be equal to this. So he's loading that driver. He's doing the same thing with, well, very similar to what I did here, except that he has some of his data transparent, so you can't really see what exactly he's loading. From over here, you can actually see everything, right? You can see what driver I'm loading. You can see my local host name and everything. You can see my username and you can see my password as well. But over here, you can't see anything. It's just saying, oh, this is the thing you'll be loading. That's the thing you'll be loading. Which has the username, and this is the thing you'll be loading using the password. And this all he was able to do using the properties. I guess it's an API, or it's I think it's an API. And then he stored all that stuff here, and he's just loading everything a little in a transparent way. And then over here again, he's just loading the driver class, and he's creating connection. So that was the same way as us. So connection. He's getting the URL from here, he's getting the username from here, and then he gets the password from here. So that's how he connected. And then he has actually, this is something I got. That's not from him. That's just I don't know why I put a result set. I'm just creating. I was just using this to create statements. I didn't need a return a result set. But this, what basically this method is doing is just creating statements and then it's executing them. It's actually, I had to change it. It was create. I had it initially as create, but I wasn't able to create databases tables using create. And it took me. I was like, why should we create, right? But then I found out that you actually need to change this to update. So if you use stated that execute here. Yeah, execute query. You won't be able to create tables. You need to have execute update. So yeah, that was something I wrote. Don't really worry about this too much because these have some really useless. It says a result set as a return type. I mean, I'm not returning anything at all. Actually, it's just returning null. It's not returning anything. I'm not doing anything here. But the basic functionality of this was just to execute queries. The next was this right here, read database. So what is this returning? This is returning a list with a string type data type. So my mouse is acting up. Give me one So this is returning a list of string type. Read database, obviously, he's meaning to read data from the database. That's why he named that method. So what are we passing? We're passing a table name and a column name. And this also throws an exception. So he created a new array list called data over here, and then he's connecting to the database. And then he's executing a statement called select all from, obviously he's storing everything in the result set, which is a variable created earlier over here. So statement that execute query, so it's executing query, and what he's doing is selecting all from table name. So this table name will be the table name you'll be passing as a parameter. So for instance, if it was lowest number over here, so that's the table we'll be looking at. And then it's going to select all the data from table name. And data, which is that string list we just created, data is equal to get result set data. All the result set data from that column name. So basically, this data list is going to store everything from this column name you pass over here and from the table. And he throws a bunch of exceptions, and then he returns data. So why does he return data? Basically, it'll help you store all your data into something. So that's why if you go to this example here, that's why over here he has to create another. Well, you have to create another list called lowest value of string type, and then that's why you're able to store it now. Let's see, if you store it as integer type, this will give me an error. Why? Because it requires either connectdb to return integer type, or it requires this to change its type to a string type, so that the parameters, the data types match. So as you can see, we're returning data which is of list string type. So that's why we have to keep this string as well. And then you see there's no more. So once you return, so over here, for instance, we were executing, we're just gathering data from table lowest number and then column lowest number. And then we're just storing that value into that. Obviously, you could use this as well. In this case, if you wanted to store all the data, you could just use methods I created. Where is it? For instance, insert and retrieve data. So you could use this method to also retrieve the data instead of using an array list. You could just create a variable, a string type variable, and then retrieve all the data. Or like I created a list, you can actually just create a list of integer type, and just iterate it through here, and then you'll display the output. So at the same time, you wouldn't even need to execute anything here. Sorry, you need to create this list over here, or do this either. You could just simply inside of your method over here, iterate that list you just stored everything into, and it would output everything for you rather than it creating. Rather than this is because this is useless data waste. I mean, this is wasting data. Um, well, actually, you're also creating a list here, so not entirely, but then you're retrieving data while you already have a list created inside this method. So while you have a list created inside this method, why do you want to store it again into another array list over here? That's that's two lists we have there, and they occupy space. So I'm pretty sure what my competitive video is, you just wanted us to see how you can store, store data into different data. Or maybe there's another reason behind it. I'm not sure, but that's why you actually wouldn't need to even do this. You could just implement an iterator inside of that database. So when it reads, when data reads everything from your result set, it could just iterate through here, and then it would output everything here, rather than it coming back here, storing everything into this list, and then you iterate it here and then display everything out. So yeah, so that was basically how this read database method was working. You would pass in a string table name and you would pass in a column name. It would read everything into an array list and retrieve it. You could obviously make a lot of adjustments to this and make it work as you desire. Close, just a closing method. If result set is not null, you're just closing it. Same for the statement, same for the connect. I did it in every method. This is probably a lot better. You just have the method each time, so your code doesn't look all jumbled up. Private list string get result set data. Result set 2, and string column name. Throw the SQL exception. So this is also returning a list of string type, and I believe this is also storing data. Let's see what it does. List string, data list, and new array list. So you're creating a string type for the array list. While result set.next, so basically while it has the value stored into it, string item name is equal to result set.getString column name. So you're storing into this item name string, you're storing all the data from this column, which you would be passing as a parameter. And then at the same time, in this data list over here, you're adding that item. So basically, it's an iterator which first reads all the data. So as earlier I showed you, use the getString method to collect information from the column name. So that's what he's doing. He's grabbing all the information from that column name inside this string data, and then he's adding at the same time it into this array list over here, and then he's returning that data. So this is another thing you could actually use to get your results, like get your values you stored inside of the database. This is another method, and one was reading and one was getting. So essentially, they're doing the same thing, except that this over here stores everything from the table. It's selecting all from the table, and this is actually selecting from a column. So you would use this to actually get something from a specific table's column. Public void insert data from array to MySQL. It has an array, an integer type array as one parameter, a table name as second, and a column name as third. And he has a try-catch statement for that exception. He's connecting to the database, and he's iterating through that array, and then he's got a prepare statement. So he's executing a prepare statement, insert into table name, which you would be passing as a parameter up here, column name, which you would also be passing as a parameter, and all the values. And this basically means that you're dumping all the values from your array into here. So basically, the column name, you'll be dumping all the values from your array inside into this column name, and that's what this is doing. So ps.setIn, I'm not exactly sure what this does. It's been a question mark. Actually, I didn't take a look at what this exactly does. But I'm pretty sure it has to do with storing the data. Anyone know what exactly this does? Okay, let me view. So you see the question mark in the values? Yes, right here. Inserting the values from data to values. Oh, okay. So that's what this is doing. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Completing the SQL statement. Okay. So inside of this, okay. So basically, this question mark is completed here. So you're just storing everything over here inside of these values. And then you're just executing updates. So, and one means that the first question mark, in this case, we can have multiple. So you could probably have ps set in. So you could have, two, like that. And then if you had a second array, you would just type in the second array here. And inside of this statement, you would probably have another column, I guess. Okay. Cool. Okay, that's good to know. Oh, and then another question mark, right? And another question mark. So column name, insert into table name, then you would have a comma, column name, and then you would have another value separated by a comma. Yeah. And then in the end, you would execute it. So that's what this is doing. Okay, so that's great. That's one of the things I didn't really understand in this. So I think this is what you would do. So insert into table name, column name, and values, right? So you would probably have comma and then another column name and another quest values and another question mark. Yeah. Okay, just like that. So you would need two question marks for the second one, or you just need one question mark. So like that, or just like that. Like that, or like that. I did unmute you.
Yes, you did. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So yeah, basically that's how I did it. We can explain it tomorrow. So what you do is you will keep on inserting question marks after question mark, comma, question mark, and you have to have more than one column name. So what you do is you provide a column name and the data column name and the data. I could probably show it.
No, you can actually save it for your own entering section. That's fine. Let's just say you clarified it for me.
There you go. So something like this.
Yeah, there you go.
Alright, and then you just keep on passing the values using the set in feature. So it's going to keep on replacing all these question mark values and question mark.
All that data from these arrays.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Undo everything I did. So yeah, and then lastly, you haven't executed it yet. So lastly, you have to execute it, and then it'll do all of the scoring for you, and then throws a bunch of exceptions, and you're done. So you just inserted data from your array to MySQL. Similarly, data from string to MySQL, you would again connect to your database. It's passing string um, string array data, table name, and a column name. So in this case, these are all just for one column. So if you have multiple columns, you would have to adjust the code just like mentioned earlier. You would need more of the. You would have to insert more columns and more values. The code is right inside this chat box. So now the only difference between this method and this method is the data type over here. This is string, and this is all integer data type, except the table name and the column name doesn't have to be string because their name. Except the data you're passing, this one is string and this one is integer. That's the only difference. As you can see, set string. So over here, your array data will have string, and then over here you had integer. So those two are the main. That's the only difference. So as I said earlier, you can just manipulate methods for your own convenience. Like you could have during the exam you could have manipulated his methods for your own convenience. Okay, so direct database query execute. So basically, this is to execute queries. And then again, this is also returning a list of string types. So at the same time, you could actually also get all the data that you use to execute the query. So as soon as you execute this query, then you could also get the data from it. I didn't use this, so I'm not exactly sure, but I assume that's what it's doing. Data column, get result set. Insert data from array list to MySQL. So I didn't use this at all because this was using the object type. So basically, what it's doing is you're passing a list with an object type data, and it's an array list, and you have a table name, column name, you're connecting to a database. You're iterating through the object list, and each time you iterate, you're storing something inside of the table. So table name you'll be passing right here, and the column name you'll also be passing right here. And as we just mentioned, these values, this question mark, is spelled up here. So what it'll do is each time it'll iterate, it'll say insert into table name. Let's say the table name is lowest number, right? And insert to table name, lowest number, column name, lowest column underscore lowest number. So that's our column name. And the values. So values we do not know yet. So once we go to this line and we see SD, that's the value we're going to be storing in the first question mark, which is this right here. So what is the first value we'll be storing? Whatever this list contains. The first at the index 0, whatever value it is, it'll be storing it into that table, into that column name, and then it'll be iterating through this because a list can obviously have multiple units and store multiple data. So it'll iterate till it's empty, and then once it's done, it's just going to end. So that's what this method was doing. So this is one of the methods I use. So it says insert data from array list integer to MySQL. So I had to modify his method again. So since object was not the type I wanted, I just changed from object to integer. So since I wanted to pass an integer list, a perfect example would be prime numbers. So I wanted to pass an integer type list. Since I was storing all of my prime numbers right here into an integer list, and I wanted to store all of that data inside of the database. So I created a table, prime numbers using a query, table underscore prime numbers, column underscore prime numbers, integers, and then I don't know why it took a huge amount of time. I could not improve this time. Employees data was very nasty for me. It was not organized. It was not organized. You could say that. I did not have I did not have a great way to work around. I just stored everything into an array list, and I printed it out as it came. So whatever you stored in whichever order. I think I made multiple. Let me take a look. Exactly, I did in an employee. Um, so what I did was, where is it? So scanner enter employee's ID. So what I did was each time the user would input, like for instance, you have to create the employee's ID, right? So each time the user would input the employee's ID, I would store it into a variable, and then I would add that variable into a list. And each time it was this list was a integer type list. As you can see, store info int. So when the employee entered his ID, I would store it as employee that assigned ID A, and then store info int dot add A. So I would store it as an integer type, and then I just dumped it into the column. That's how I did it. Let me see. It looks disgusting. I know that much. Back then, I didn't really have a lot of ways to work out. It was like 2, 3 in the morning. I was like, okay, let's get done. Or in this court. Right. I'm not sure what I named them. Table.
Table name.
What do you mean by that? All right. Select all from endpoint. So you see, I was storing all the employee info into, well, this was everything I dumped using a string array list, and this was everything I used using an integer array. So this was the employee ID, this was his rate per hour, and this was his salary, this was his yearly salary, and I'm not sure what that. I think this was 900. I think it was his pension or his bonus. Enter the number of hours worked. And F is equal to calculate yearly employee salary, and G calculate. So yeah, that was the pension. 900 was the pension, and the bonus was 600. So all I did was in the end I created an if statement inside of bag creation. So if SP is equal to null, don't do anything, or else system that print out info is equal to SP. So basically, when it would print out, it would say info, hey, it's Furqan, it's a QA, and he's single. And then the rest would be, 12, 150, 600. It didn't really say that. What I could have done better now that I actually know a little bit about databases. Yeah, so yeah, that's, you see now, that would have been a lot better if I actually bothered to look at it, or, I actually explored a lot more into it. So at that time, it was like 3 in the morning, and I was really tired. I just wanted to get over with it.
Yeah, I know it was with everyone. The time was a bit constrained.
Right. So I was like, oh, God, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And honestly, I procrastinated a little, and not just procrastinate. I didn't have time that much over the weekend. I did procrastinate, but I started on Friday, and then I finished on Friday. So it took me a while. And yeah, this was one of the parts that actually this and storing in the prime number took me a while. So yeah, now if I actually bothered, all of my stuff I learned, like all this database was from tutorial point, tutorial point. And this actually, if you go here, this will show you everything step by step. So you did not need you didn't need arrays to store anything. You would just simply create variables that would store and print out the data for you. Yeah, it is a very helpful site. So for anything, this it's not only for JDBCs. it has multiple languages, I believe, and it's great for Java as well. So now all of the stuff that I'm going over today, like all this database stuff, I actually learned all of this today. I'll be honest with you guys. I learned all of this today, and it all made more sense to me today. And I just went over it, and then I went over and prepared all that code. And it's not hard at all. And then I was like, facepalm. I was like, if I actually went to this website and I read everything here, I would have done the exam in less amount of time and with a lot less headache. I would know what's going on. I was still able to figure out some of it, but still, like, there was a lot of question marks in my head, while doing stuff. I didn't know what the read database was doing exactly. I didn't know what the other things were doing. But this right here, it just took me a day. I'll provide the link in chat.
Basically, we weren't really prepared for the exam.
That's true.
If we had read the book, done those labs and everything, I think we would have been able to do all of this in 9 days.
Yeah, actually, if you had like the whole day free, you'd be able to finish it in a day as well. Except some things, require some logic. Otherwise, you could always use the internet for help. Nobody's stopping you. But yeah, it would take at most 2 days. You would be able to finish it, 2 to 3 days. And that's without a headache. You would spend a few hours a day and you would be able to finish it. But as I said, everybody is always, hey, the instructor didn't go over it, so why should we bother with it? I think that's the mindset we choose, which is not right. And as you can see, it only took me a few hours just going over these things, and it made a lot more sense to me. Now I don't really need to I didn't actually say, hey, what is happening here? What's going on? Or now I can look at multi-times code and take a look at it and see all of this, and it all makes sense to me, like what's happening, what's going on. So you guys should probably, if you're still having some question marks, you should probably just go to that website and just go over it, and it'll baby step you into JDBC. Obviously, this has all these are all the basic things, but that's where your base is. That's where you'll start from, and then everything else will make a lot more sense. Okay, so moving on. What else? Insert data from array list string to MySQL. We just went over that. So that's the data I just modified using his original method here. I just changed this object into string. Right here, a string list, because I needed to store string data type. That's the only difference. It still does the same thing. It still iterates through it. Actually, it iterates through an object. So I didn't even bother changing this. I wasn't sure if I should play around with it, but now I know I can just change this to a string too. It won't make a difference, but it still works for me. So basically, it's doing the same thing again. It's just you're just inserting into a table, which you pass over here, a column which you pass over here, and values question mark. That question mark as usual is resolved around here. First question mark, and then you're adding the ST value at the current index. So right now, if it's the first iteration, it'll be 0 index. So whatever the value is at 0 index, it'll store in the first row, or whichever row is free in this column name over here. So whichever column you're giving, you're passing. Let's see. So insert data from array list string 2 to MySQL. So this is something I created for this map question over here. I did not know how to store a map inside of a database. So I just tried a bunch of different methods. In the end, I ended up using two array lists. But I tried creating an array list which has a data type of a list, and I tried passing it. But in the end, at the read database, I had to actually also modify this method here then read database, because this only returns a list of string type, not a list of a string type. So I got lazy and I was like, no, I don't want to modify it, so I stopped. So yeah, this is just me messing around with multi-bytes code, and guys could do the same. If you, I'm pretty sure a lot of you did. So yeah, this is a list that contains a list of a string type. This does the same thing. And that's about it for. So I went over some extra methods. So if you guys still have problems back then during the exam, I hope they've been like clarified a little bit now. So now you can probably just open up a fresh new project and start creating your own connections to the database and utilizing and optimizing it, like creating your own methods to do exactly what you want and not like working based upon somebody's method. Um, so we could actually go over some of the problems from the exam. So for instance, this finding missing number problem. Let's go over the math problem. Let's start with this one. So lowest number. So you have an array. By the way, anyone has any questions regarding the connection of database? You could ask away, shoot away. If I can answer, or if anyone else can answer, we'll definitely help you out. So anyone has any questions so far? Okay, no questions. Yep. So he provided us with so what is it? What do you mean by that? Oh yeah, also yeah. So if you take a look at what Bilal, I think he posted up there. Bilal posted up there. This right here. So that's what I was having trouble too. So that's why my database looks ugly. Yeah. I'll just post it here again. So that's what Bilal posted in here. So with this, you can enter, multiple columns at the same time, which works, in a great way because you would have each and every record aligned perfectly as you want it. So he just gave us a list, and he just had to arrange it from lowest to largest. I became lazy. I just borrowed Mafi's method. It's right here in sort somewhere, and then in the sort class, he wrote the selection sort for us. So you can just use the selection sort method and pass in the array. Once you pass it, it's going to automatically sort from smallest to biggest, smallest to largest, and then all you have to do is print it out, print out the zero index, which would give you the smallest value once it's sorted. Next we just, I'm sorry?
If I may add something to it, the best way to do it would be to go through the list, go through the array, and keep on and have another variable where you are storing the lowest value. So it would keep on comparing it with whatever it's getting, and keep on replacing it as long as it's getting the lowest value. So let's say A is less than B, so it would replace B with A. So
right
to the 10th value, it would compare it with whatever you have in that variable, the lowest value. It would compare it. If it's lower than that, it would replace it.
So basically, so we could set it as the zero index to be the first value.
Yeah.
And then it would connect. It would then compare it to I plus 1, let's say. So that would be the first index. Yeah. So and then I plus plus, and then it would be 2, and then it would compare it with this, all the way there, and then eventually, if whatever is stored in A, if we call it A,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we would store it in the first index. Right, right.
That's
Yeah.
usually how it's done whenever like you go through the exercises, like whenever you're doing like programming courses and stuff, whenever you're taking one of those courses and they teach you how to do it, that's how you do it. So you keep on replacing that variable with whatever you keep on comparing it with the next variable in the list, in the array, and if it's lower than what you already have in that variable, you replace it. If it's greater than you do nothing, you move on to the next element.
Yeah, the only reason I used the selection sort was, I don't know, but during the class when he went over it, he said he wanted everything from lowest to largest. That's why I was like, there's no point in actually just having the first index being the smallest. He wants everything, so let's use the sort to have the list sorted out, and then in the end it'll also get you the smallest number as well as yeah. When he went over in the class, he said, of course, he was giving us an example, and then he was saying, of course, in the end, your list will be from smallest to largest. So that's why I was a little confused. So I just used this. I used this sort. I used this sort. Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, that's what one of my first programming classes also made me do. Is like sort from the array, and compare. Take the first index as the smallest. Assume it's the smallest value, and then keep on comparing it to the next and next and next. And each time, each time if it's smaller, and just change the variable to that value. And then in the end, once it finishes iterating, you can just store it in the first index. So that's what the lowest number will be, or you could just leave it inside that variable, and then just output it. So yeah, so that I just went ahead and used the selection sort and then printed out the index at 0, which gave us the lowest number. And then this was already written for us, except this part over here. This is just the query I added, which actually creates the table where you run it. So you create the table and then you store data from array. So at this point, your array would be this. And well, this I guess he did want us to sort it then. I don't know. I'm confused. Either way, as long as you were able to find the smallest value, let's assume that. So you could just store your your array however you want using this method over here. So table underscore lowest number, column underscore lowest number, and then you can just retrieve the values inside of this array list you created up here. As I mentioned earlier, it has to be string type. If you change the type over here, it's obviously these are numbers, right? So you don't need a string type, but inside of his method read database, he is using a string type list. So once you retrieve it, it has to be a string type. Otherwise, you would have to go back into his method, either create a new method or change his method into an integer one. Change the list type inside of his method. Then you would be able to change this into an integer and then retrieve all the values over here. And the rest just throws an exception. And then your data shown is from the table underscore lowest number, and then you iterate through your array list, and it shows you the list by itself. Let's see. That was the lowest number one. What's next? Pattern. So the pattern, it was this pattern right here. So I mean, it's very simple. It's just I didn't find like the logic behind it because I wasn't really sure how to apply the logic, so I just assumed it ends at 0. And from what I see here, for the first 10 numbers, I mean, you're subtracting this number, the initial number, by 10 times. Then you're subtracting, after this is done, subtracting, 10 times, you're adding it to that number. Okay, that's great. Um, adding it to that, and then you're adding one to that number, and then you're again subtracting that number 10 times. So basically, once you add, how much were we subtracting by here? So we're subtracting by one. So it's one, 10 times. So you get to 90. Then you start subtracting two. So you're adding uh, one into that number. MongoDB. Oh, I believe somebody said they'll be going over MongoDB on Thursday. So, yeah, somebody is going over MongoDB. I think somebody else was talking about that they use MongoDB. I can't remember who, but somebody else actually used MongoDB for. Oh yeah, yeah. I actually couldn't attend yesterday's session. Did he go? Oh, and it's here. Oh, he did something else. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Hutch will be going over MongoDB on Thursday. So yeah, that's something I need to go over as well. I have no idea how to operate MongoDB. Only thing I know is I created these. I created these to make my life easy. MongoDB, and then this one Mongo. I did, as Bilal said, you could actually create environment variables, so you don't have to navigate to the pad all the time and run this. You could just run it just like we did for Java. You could just create environment variables for it, and then you could run it directly through command line. I'll do this today after the session. I'll actually as well. That's a great suggestion. Post this. Yeah, I don't need this. So so the pattern problem here. Okay, so the pattern problem. So once 10 numbers, you subtract one, you just add one to that number which you were subtracting. So 1 plus 1, which is 2, and then for the next 10 iterations, you subtract by 2. So that would be 20, right? So all the way to 70. And then you add 1 to that number, which becomes 3, and then 10 more iterations, which would be 30 more numbers, so all the way to 40. And then you add 1 to that number again, so it's from 3 to 4, and then it will be 10 more iterations. So 10 more iterations, which is 40, so 40 minus 40 would be 0. So that's where I stopped. I didn't go over 0, so that's the logic I used. So I created a list to store all my, since he was saying, you have to store and retrieve it from database. I created a list called pattern, and there was an integer type. So pattern.addn, I just initially added the first value, which is 100. So you're adding 100 now. So while n is greater than 0, so n has to be greater than 0 for this to work. N currently is 100. So if counter is greater than or equal to 1, counter is currently 1. And counter is less than or equal to 10, so counter is 1. So go in here. N is equal to n minus 1. So 100 is equal to 100 minus 1. There's another way to write this, but it's actually, the other way is probably better. This n is equal to n minus 1. And then once we found that value, n minus 1 would be, what would it be? It would be 99, right? So you would just add 99 into your n. So currently you have 100 stored. Now that's on the 0 index. So on the first index you would have 99 stored. And then you're just increasing the counter to actually know how many times you iterated. So I iterated this once, so the counter will become 2. So why not start from 0? Because I'm actually including 10. If I did not include 10, then this would not give me the right result. So 1 to 10 is actually 10 iterations. So it goes over this 10 times, and once this if condition is met, so basically that means one's counter is 11. It's not 10 anymore. It's 11. We should be at 90 over here. We should be over here, and then it'll go to over counter is equal to greater or equal to 11 and less than or equal to 20. So it will iterate 10 more times, and this time it'll subtract by 2. Each time it'll store the value inside of that array list as well. And then it's going to increase the counter. So at 11, we should be at, when counter is 11, we should be at 88 over here, and so on and so forth. And once we're done, 88, 80, and we should be at 70. So once you get out of this if condition, you would be over here. Actually, it'll keep iterating, right? So, but each time it'll go to this condition because of the counter number. Once your counter crosses 20, it'll move to this condition over here, and it'll subtract by 3 for 10 iterations. Once those 10 iterations are done, it'll go to n minus 4. And once that's done, we should be left with 0. You could actually have some logic behind this. I mean, I was lazy. I just wanted to stop at 0. I didn't bother trying to find it. But yeah, you could have some logic behind it, so you would have a stop on this. Otherwise, this could go on forever. Like the next iteration would be, you would add 1 would be 5. It would be 5, and then 6, and then 7, 8, 9, and then you have infinite amount of numbers, then you would go in negative infinity at some point. No, just keep on growing and growing and growing. So I just stop at 0. And Bilal will show us tomorrow how to apply some logic to this, I believe this number here. How to keep, yeah. Yeah, there you go. You could also use cohesion. That also works. Okay, so yeah, so that probably has some sort of sequence that works with it, as you like a series or sequence that you don't need to bother writing all of that. It'll just follow a logic and we'll keep on giving you the output. So again, I just created another. Yeah, that laziness cut up to lazy. So this list, string greet pattern table from database is. So this list pattern, this was an integer type array list, right? So this was a clear, to clarify, whenever I say a list, I mean array list. I don't mean a list, I mean array list. So the pattern, the add n, so each time we were storing it, so right now it should have all these values stored inside of it. All we have to do is, dump them into the table, into one column. And so we create a table and we dump everything into there. So table is called pattern, column is called pattern, it's integer type, and then we're storing everything in there. And then read pattern table from database. So this is the list I created here of string type. Maybe you can go along with it. Learning over through the night. It's okay, we can have like a half an hour session tomorrow. We don't have to keep up for all 3 hours. It's a lot. And we've probably been going over the exam. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are finding the exam. Yeah, sometimes I do. No, but really, yeah, we want you to sleep well. Just you don't have to do it that long. Just do like for an hour, and whatever I leave out, and whatever else you have to use, because your connection to the database and all that. So we can go over all of that again, because I'm pretty sure there will be people attending tomorrow that did not attend today. Let's see. So retrieving, we're just dumping, and so on. So yeah, that was it. That was about it. If anyone has any questions regarding this, we'll just move on to the next one. Factorial. Okay. So this we had to do two different ways. I believe one was the iteration, and the other was with recursion. Recursion, what it does, it calls itself. It calls itself till the until the condition is met. So for instance, we have the reason I use this as a static method is because the main is right in that class. So there's no point of actually creating an object for that. So you can just create a static method and just call it right here. And it's not like we're going to be changing values all that much that we have to be worried of making it static or not. So static in fact recursion, and you're passing a number. If number is equal to 1, just return 1. So basically the factorial of 1 is 1. If int number fact is equal to fact recursion, number minus 1 times number. Return number back. And then it'll keep on calling itself till the number is 1. Basically that's what it's going to do. So what is it doing? It's calling its own method over and over and over again. So number is equal to 1, and then it'll just return 1. Each time it'll decrement the number over here, and then it'll return number back, which should be, let's say if you have 7, it'll be 7 minus 1 times number. Then it'll go back and it'll do 6 minus 1 times number, and then go back, then 5 minus 1 times number, and so on and so on and so on, and then eventually it'll give you the factorial, which would be, if you have, for instance, 6, it'll be 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, and then that'll be the factorial of 6. And factorial for iteration, it's, you could just use a for loop or an if loop. A for loop or a while loop. So if number is equal to 1, you just return 1. And for n I, so you start from 1. I is less than number. So this works in the opposite way. In this method, you're actually increasing the number. So initially you have number fact, whatever number you set. I'm not sure if you say. Let's say you're doing it 1 here. Sorry, that's the wrong one. So you have number is equal to 1, and then number of factorial. You're changing the value over here. Is 1 times I. Initially, I is just 1, right? So you're just multiplying by 1 by 1. So, and then you iterate it. So let's say if the number is 6 again. So initially you have 1 times 1 is equal to 1. So now the value of factorial is still 1. And then you iterate it, and I becomes 2. Number factorial, which is 1 at the moment, times 2. Now it becomes 2. So once you iterate it again, this would be 3, and then 3 times 2 is 6, and then so on and so forth. But this works in a different method than actually, like 9 times 8 times 7. That you can see that the number is being decreased. Over here, you're actually doing the opposite way. You're increasing it, and you're multiplying it. And then over here, I just added a scanner method. A scanner reference object, a reference variable here, so that user can enter the integer, and you're just passing that integer into the two methods. One is by recursion, one is by iteration. Factorial, I think we went over this in class as well. Finding missing number, we just did that. Pattern, find number. Actually, we went over prime number. Factorial, which just went. Prime number, we actually went in class. Pretty simple logic. Let's go over anagrams and duplicate words and permutations. Let's see what we have in here. So anagram. Again, a static method, just so I don't have to, create a reference object or a reference variable here to call the method. So static void anagram, we're passing two words. So what is an anagram? Write a Java program to check if two strings are an anagram. Anagrams are basically same characters but in different orders. So cat and act are the same, army and Mary are the same. So over here you first you store into word one length and word two length. You store the length of those words. So string word one, string word two. Why do we do that? I'll just tell you a bit. So this is also a Boolean check. So initially we're just initializing it as true, a Boolean variable. We're just initializing it as true. So we have word one dot length, which is an integer type, and word two dot length, which is an integer type. So we're just storing them inside these two variables, and then we're these two words that we pass, we create two new variables of both of the string type. One is word one without white spaces, and word two without white spaces. That W stands for white spaces. What I'm doing here is I'm taking word one and I'm replacing all these white spaces and all these commas with just nothing at all. So basically getting rid of them. So if you have two words, let's say I am, there's I am and then comma, let's say comma, and then you have another word. So it will become I am would become I am without any space. So there would not be a space in between them, and then there would be no comma after that either, and then that word after that would actually be joined. So it will be something like this. Let's say you have I am, comma, and another word here, right? Let's not put full stop because I'm not getting rid of full stop. By full stop I mean Q. So what is this going to do? It's going to replace all the white spaces and all the commas with just nothing at all. So this is what's going to happen. I am word. So it's just going to combine everything together. So it's doing that for both of the words, and then it's going to check the length. If word one without space dot length, so the length of this and the length of this, if they are not equal, then is anagram is equal to false. Or then automatically means that the length is not equal. Hence, the two words can't be the same. So automatically, you know over there that they're not anagram. So you're getting rid of that. So else. So now you have two character arrays over here, and you're naming them word one array and then word two array, and then word one without space, you're changing it to lowercase, and then you're sending it to the character array. And same with the word two. Now you're just calling a sort method to sort the word one and word two array out. I believe these will sort them in a sense. So A, B, C, blah blah. In that sense. However, actually, I'm not exactly sure because it's a character. What if you have characters inside of your code? Inside of your strings. So I would assume it stores it in a Unicode method, like as a Unicode. Unicode is it's like C has ASCII. This has Unicode. How would I describe that? Like
Furqan.
How you have SI units. Let's just say it has a bunch of value for each character. So ampersand has a value. Your commas have a value, and so on. A has a value. It has its own Unicode value. Actually, let me show you the Unicode table. Something like that. This is not very nice. Unicode character table. So all these values represent something. This is not in a very organized way, but it's something similar. So each of these characters have a Unicode value. So once you sort them, they'll sort them according to Unicode value. over here, and that's how it's going to find out how exactly if the characters are the same. It's going to say it's an anagram. Let's see. So it sorts it. It sorts word one array, then it sorts word two array. Then it says in is anagram is equal to arrays that equals word array one and array two. If is anagram is true, so what is it doing? So is it anagram? So it's going to check, are they equal? Is word one equal or is word two equal? By equal it means it's going to check the characters, are they the same? So if they're the same in anagram, word one and word two, those are the words you initially passed here. It's just going to say they are anagrams. Otherwise, it's going to say word one and word two are not anagrams. And as you can see, you can just so if I run this, run anagram. So fat cat and the tag ATF. So basically, it's the same. I just jumbled them up. Fat cat and tag ATF are anagrams, and then it says Mary and Yarn are also anagrams. And then it says over here I added spaces, and then it says fat cat is a mad cat, and fat mad cat is, so these are all anagrams. So yeah, so it's a very simple code. It's just very basic logic behind it, and so let's go to the picture. What permutation? Oh yeah, this is the same. So duplicate words. I think after this, I'm gonna end the session unless you guys have more questions regarding anything else. My throat can't take it anymore. Oh, it's just a Unicode table. Yeah, Unicode character table. So we have a string he gave us. Java is a programming language. Java is also an island of Indonesia, and Java is widely used language. So we have to find the duplicate words. We had to count how many duplicate words there were. Count the occurrences and also find duplicate words by themselves. So one thing you need to keep in mind, you see this language over here. Makiba uses a trick. You see this one is uppercase. This one is lowercase. So if you do not change the cases, I believe it does not recognize. Because I kept on getting Java is and Java is, Java is and Java is and Java is and Java is. So only these two words were, duplicated. But then if you have the language, and then if you have this has lowercase. And one more thing, this period over here is also causing an issue because this period actually counts as a character. So the way I was doing it was in characters. So if this language has a character right next to it, period character, it's not going to recognize this as the same as this. So you could either trick it and just add the full stop period here, or you could just get rid of the, you could just get rid of the period over here. String word st. So this string here. Inside of a string called word, a word array, which is of the string type, I'm changing everything into lowercase first, and I'm replacing all the full stops by nothing. So basically, there are no full stops, and then I'm splitting the words. So Java is a. So how is it splitting? It's splitting by looking at the spaces. So if Java and is have a space in between, it's going to split those two words. And then it's going to store all of that in the array. So Java and is a programming language. So what will it do? It'll store Java in index 0, is in index 1, A in index 2, and programming index 3, language in index 4. And obviously this period over here is going to be gone because, as you can see, I'm replacing that period with nothing at all. So this basically means that you're getting rid of the period. then just initializing sum, initializing the counter, and then float average length. The reason I put it float is because I did not know if it was going to be a perfectly, a regular integer. So I used a float because he says find the average length of the words. Now, one thing I was confused about was I did not know if you wanted the length of the whole string or just the length of the words, of the duplicated words. So what I did was I just calculated the average length of the duplicated words. So you have two loops. One is an inner loop, one is the outer loop. So you have sum initially 0, and then count 1 is equal to 0. I know why I called this one count 1. Anyway, so for int I is equal to 0, I is less than word dot length. I plus. So as long as I is not, doesn't exceed the amount of, the length of this array. So now, what is you can actually calculate the length of the array over here. How? By looking at these words. So Java is programming. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So you can actually count the length of the array. So it's going to be 17. The 17 index value. So 0 to 16. So initially count is 0, and then you have an inner loop. So now over here you have another variable called j, and this also keeps on running until the word dot length is reached, and then you're just incrementing it. If so word I, so I you would be at 0 initially. If word at 0, which is Java, dot equals at word at j. So, if Java is less than I break, so this shouldn't work. If this happens, you just break it and get out of the loop. So count is initially 0. Also, we're going to increment here. So if word I dot equals word dot j count plus plus. So here we're just counting the occurrences. So Java at 0 that equals to word j at 0. But index for 0 is not Java, so this won't count it. But it'll increment it, and it will keep on seeing how many times the word. So initially you want to check this, it'll check is programming language Java, and it's going to compare with what is at 0. So what do you have at word I 0? So word I0 you have which is 0, which is Java, and then over here you will check with is, and then it's going to loop, and it's going to check what you call it. It has to check this too, by the way, because we want to count the number of occurrences, right? So it occurs 3 times. If you exclude this, if you start this at index 1, it would not count this one. It would just go to is, right? So if you start this at index 1, it would only count is. It would start from is. It would not start from this. So what you need to do, if word I dot equals word j. So if word at I, so at I you have Java equal to word at j, which is also Java, and you just count plus plus. You're just adding 1 to the counter, which is true right now because at I is equal to 0, you have Java, and at j is equal to 0, you have Java. So it's true. You count plus plus. Now you iterate, right? Now from here you still have word I, which is still Java, but here j becomes 1, and then it takes the value of j. So is Java equal to is? No. And then next iteration, j and so on. So each time it uses the same word, it'll count plus one, and so on. Then if count is greater than 1, it kept on going and found some repetition. System the out the word plus the word I, which would be so after it checks out how many times a certain word actually inside of that thing, it's gonna output and then it's gonna go back to the for loop, and then it's gonna go to the second word. Which is I at 1 is. And then it would compare is to Java is equal to so on and so forth. But if it encounters the same word, like if you already went over the word, it's gonna and then in the end, it's just gonna count this average length and so it's actually fast. So the word language, the word Java occurs 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. The word is occurs 3 times, which is 1, 2, and 3. And the word language occurs 3 times. 3 times. No, 2 times. Yeah. So language and language. And the average length of the duplicated word is 4.6. You didn't have to get a float. I mean, it does not make sense to actually have 0.6 on the word. You can just round it to 4. So you can just keep it in 3. But get rid of that float. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to be it for this session. A lot of people, I think, left. A lot of people are not. And my throat is really, really dry. And I wanted to leave something for Bilal. If I do everything, you won't have anything. Okay, yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can always ask. Over here in the area. Okay, QA is already here. Question